So you're looking at all the lasers from xTool, but you can't decide what's the one that I actually need to get. And especially when you look at some of the price tags, you definitely don't want to make the wrong decision. So in this video, we're just gonna focus on the machines from xTool, and I'm gonna give you my recommendation on which one you should get. All right, what's up? My name is Brandon. I get to review a ton of lasers here at the Make or Break Shop, and I have reviewed all of these machines that we are going to talk about. I don't have them in front of me because I would run out of room, but actually have the S1 right there, and then the F1 Ultra over there, and I have the F1 other one down there, and then their big glass CO2 machine, the P2, is out in the shop. Now, if you want a bigger overview of all the lasers that are out there in the different companies, I have done a review. You can check it out right up there. And every single one of these machines we're gonna talk about, I've done an individual review going deep into those machines as well. There'll be links to all those down below. First off, why xTool? And there's actually one big selling point, and that is actually their software and the software integration they have into their machines. They're kind of like Apple in the laser world, where the usability and ease of use of their machines, and specifically their software, is very nice, and it's come a long way, especially over the last couple years. But with that also comes with the price, and that is the actual price of these machines. They're gonna be more expensive when you compare them like spec by spec to the competition. So with that, let's talk about my recommendations. And I'm actually going to recommend the most expensive machine to start, and then we're gonna kind of go down from there depending on the things that you might be needing. So I start off with recommending the P2 or P2S. This machine got a slight spec upgrade earlier this year. This is like the big desktop laser. It would fill up this entire desk. It has a glass CO2 tube on the back, and if you don't know what that means, that's totally fine. But when we look at some of the other machines like the F1 and the S1, the laser is gonna get generated a different way. But the big benefit of a big glass tube is they're gonna be pretty powerful. In this case, this is 55 watts. So specifically, if you're looking at cutting stuff like thin wood or acrylic, then the P2 is gonna be the one that you need to go with. And if you need to cut on clear acrylic, you're gonna have to go with a glass CO2 tube or the xTool P2. Now, the biggest drawback with this machine is going to be the price. P2S, the upgraded version, is $4,200, making it the most expensive machine we're gonna talk about. The P2 is going to be less than that, typically around like $3,600, $3,700, depending on the deals that folks are running. But in terms of features, this one is going to be pretty much the most robust. They're gonna have integrated cameras, so when you put material in there, you'll be able to see it inside of their software, move stuff around, and you're going to be good to go. The safety is going to be really nice as well. They actually have a physical latch on the lid, so there's no way to open it when it's running. It's got some internal like fire detection stuff that will cut power to the laser, and it's got some inbuilt exhaust fans to pull all of like the nasty stuff outside of the laser. But you'll have to do some more stuff with the exhaust, and we'll get to that here in a second. This one's gonna come in at about 600 by 300 millimeters, and it's gonna have a speed of 600 millimeters per second. Now, the dual camera system on it, I really like. So they have one camera that's kind of in the back of the machine that gives you that big overview that we just talked about, but they also have another camera that is on the laser head itself. It's gonna be able to give you more like fine resolution in terms of the pictures it's taking. So it takes a picture of just like a certain area. It also has autofocus, so you don't have to worry about like what the distance is on the laser head itself. And then there's slats inside of it that you can remove and put in depending on the type of material that you're working with. Now, you might be getting a machine because you want to engrave on like tumblers or cups. This does support a rotary, but you're gonna have to buy a riser that the whole machine will sit on. They'll give you enough room to be able to get the cup and the rotary inside of it. But there's another benefit with that riser is you're going to get pass-through, meaning there's basically a door you can flip down and put material that is bigger than the machine itself inside of it. So if you're like engraving some massive piece of wood, they advertise a conveyor belt. I've used it a little bit, meaning you can put it on this like roller that will move the material through the system. It works, but it's kind of hard to get going. So I don't recommend getting this if you're counting on that feature. I really would just look at the work area itself. And in terms of xTool, this is gonna be the biggest one that you can get. Now, there's two big reasons to not buy the P2 and to go with some of the other machines. The first is if you want to do anything with metal, this style machine is not going to be the one you need to get. You're going to need to look at the F1 or the F1 Ultra, which we're going to talk about here in a second. And then the second reason is maybe that price tag is way too high and you want to come down a little bit. Then you can look at the S1. But coming back to the F1, you basically have the F1, which is this guy, or the F1 Ultra, which is right behind me. These work completely different than the P2. So the P2, the laser head is on a gantry that moves around the workbed. That's why it can be so big. In this case, the laser doesn't like physically move where it's getting generated. They actually have a mirror right here where the lens is that reflects and then bounces the laser beam all around. The benefit of that is these are much, much faster than the P2 or the S1 or the M1 Ultra or the D1 Pro that we're also going to talk about. So in the case of the F1, this is 4,000 millimeters per second, and then the F1 Ultra is going to be 10,000 millimeters per second, making that machine the fastest one that we've got. But the drawback of that is you're going to lose work area. So these are really designed to do smaller engraving type things. And the F1 specifically is really nice, especially if you're doing anything with metal. So it actually has a dual laser system. One of those lasers is a 20-watt fiber laser, and that is what you're going to use when you're interacting with metal. It's actually an invisible laser beam. That's compared to their like purple light diode laser, which is why they have these big enclosures on these machines, because you can visibly see it. And that purple diode laser is going to be on both of these. But in the case of the F1 Ultra, you're looking at a 20-watt diode, with this one being a 10-watt diode. Now that purple diode laser is going to be the same type of laser we're going to find on the S1, the M1 Ultra, the normal M1. So if you wanted a actual proper fiber laser, especially for doing like metallic objects, then the F1 Ultra is pretty much going to be the only one that you can go with. This one has an infrared laser beam, which will allow you to mark on metal, but it's only 2 watts, so the power of it is going to be a lot less, meaning you're going to have to run this a lot slower. The F1 Ultra is also going to be the most expensive if you want to do anything with metal at $3,600. And it also comes with a bigger work area of 220 by 220 millimeters versus this guy, which is 115 by 115 millimeters. A few specific features on the F1 Ultra I really like. They have this external interface that I'll show you actual footage of that's really nice. It's a color screen. It lets you interact with all of the features of the machine. It also has a big button that allows you to run it. And since this thing can run really fast, if you're doing a lot of like batch operations where you're putting things in and out really quickly, you just hit that button, fires it, hit that button, fires it. It's really set up for batch engraving. It can use this camera system to take a picture of the work area just like the P2, and then you can actually do a lot of the batch operations inside of the software. So I've used the example of using like little aluminum cards and kind of place them all over the workbed, and then it can automatically detect where those are and then apply the graphics to it, and you're going to be good to go. The F1 Ultra also comes with this like crazy conveyor belt accessory that actually works a lot better than the P2, where it's literally a treadmill that pulls the material across, takes a picture of it, figures out where to do stuff, and then runs it. And it's like all automatic, so you can just keep loading it up with material and it goes through. It's pretty wild. But in general, the F1 Ultra has actually been my biggest surprise in terms of the quality of the machine. And I've used it a good bit, even though I have more powerful fiber machines in my shop. But if you want the most powerful fiber machine for metal from xTool, the F1 Ultra is going to be way to go. And then the question from there is $3,600 is way too expensive. Is there something cheaper? Yes, the F1, which is going to be slower, smaller, and less powerful, but it can use that infrared laser to mark on metal. The big benefit of this guy, and kind of the way they advertise it, but the way I see people actually use it, is it's very portable. It actually has this handle on the top, making it easy to move around. So I see a lot of people using this machine, specifically at craft shows. If you want to customize stuff like right there in front of people, this is a good one to use. Really easy to power, you're gonna be good to go. It's just like an F1 Ultra, just not Ultra and scaled all the way down. All right, so moving off the metal stuff, if you don't want to buy a P2 because of the price, but you still want to do a lot of like wood and paper and that type stuff, then you have a few different options. The next one I would recommend to people is going to be the S1, which is this guy right here. It is using that purple light diode that we saw on the F1 and the F1 Ultra, but the whole machine is built around using that. On the spec side of things, it's pretty much as fast as the P2, but it actually has a much slower acceleration. So items are going to take longer on the S1 versus the P2 because of that, but it also is going to be a good bit cheaper. 40-watt version of this comes right in at $1,900, but you can also buy a 20-watt version at $1,400 and a 10-watt version at $900. You're going to get under $1,000. What's cool about this is those modules are interchangeable, so you can actually swap out a 40-watt for a 20-watt. And you might be wondering why you would want to do that. And with these diodes, basically basically the way they are working is there are individual laser diodes inside of it that they combine together to get more and more power. And while you get more power, you also get a thicker laser beam, meaning if you're doing really fine engraving, having a super high powered 40-watt laser isn't gonna do you any good. Actually having a lower power, like 10 watt, you're gonna get a much nicer engraving, so you might wanna switch it out for that. But because they're interchangeable, you can also pick up an IR module that is kind of similar to what we saw on the F1 that you can put on the machine and then mark on metal. But again, that metal marking is a lot different than a proper 20-watt fiber, which again is what the F1 Ultra is built for. On the work area side of things, this is going to be smaller than the P2, but bigger than both the F1 machines. This one is 500 by 320 millimeters. It is a fully enclosed diode machine compared to the D1, which it does have autofocus, but this is like a physical probe it uses on the laser head itself, because the biggest negative on this machine is it has no cameras. So if you really are counting on getting like a live view of what is inside of your work bed, then that one may not be the one to go with. It does have some really good positioning systems that I get into in the full S1 review, but if a camera is vital for what you're doing, then the S1 may not be right for you. And just like the P2, you can also buy a riser specifically for it that will open you up to being able to use a rotary. Now, if that price is still too high, you can come down to the lowest price machine that xTool offers. This is actually the one they kind of got started with and really blew up. And this is the D1 Pro. They have a few different wattages for this one as well. It is using the same type laser technology as the S1. They have a 5, a 10, and a 20-watt version that you can get. And I actually would recommend if you are going to go the D1 Pro route, look at their refurbished machines. I think those are around like 250 bucks. So a lot cheaper than the $4,200 that we started with. And so if you're just getting into lasers, kind of tinkering around, wanted to play around with them, that's a good option. But there are two things I would actually caution you with this machine. First, it's an open gantry machine, and you can see right here, you are completely exposed to the light, so you're gonna have to wear glasses, which you don't have to do on the S1 or pretty much any of the other machines, and you have no way to ventilate the smoke and the fumes. So they actually recommend buying an enclosure to go around it, so that's gonna be an additional cost for the machine. But the second thing is, it feels like they're kind of phasing out the D1 Pro design. They actually offered a 40-watt option for the D1 Pro that I did a review of. That's not available anymore. And they kind of took that off when they introduced the S1 that had that 40-watt module. So I could see xTool completely phasing out this design over having something much safer like the S1 that is fully enclosed. But if you want to go as cheap as possible and still be able to use xTool software, the D1 is going to be the one to get. Now, it's not going to have cameras. It's going to be the only machine you actually are going to have to focus yourself. The process is pretty easy. They have a little lever on the side, and you can manually move the laser head up and down. And the work area is gonna be on the smaller end at about 420 by 380 millimeters. Now, last but not least is the strangest machine, but also the most unique. So if what you are trying to cut is actually vinyl, and you're trying to do more crafting type stuff that you might wanna do with a Cricut, where you need to use an actual metal blade to cut, then the M1 Ultra is gonna be the option for you. This is kind of the jack of all trades because they used the modular diode design that they had with the S1, and then they introduced entirely different types of modules. Specifically, you have a blade module with a few different blade attachments. So like a blade that's a roller, a really fine blade, a thicker blade, but then it also has a printing module. So if you need to print something and then cut it out, that's gonna be the only machine you can get from xTool that will do that. I'll say the printing works okay. I wouldn't buy it if you're looking just to get a printer. I would definitely go with it if you're looking for the Cricut style machine plus a laser attached to it. Now on the laser side, you have a 10 and a 20 watt option. So you can't go all the way to the 40 watt laser diode that you can with the S1. And the work area is gonna be smaller than the S1 as well at 300 by 300 millimeters. And actually gets even smaller than that if you're using the print head because it like takes up some of the area. And then the price on this for the 20 watt is $1,600, where the 10 watt is gonna come in at $1,000 bucks. And then depending on the different accessories that you want to get, those are gonna be additional costs as well. So if you're coming to xTool more from the crafting and you know you're gonna be doing a lot of paper goods, vinyl, felt, leather, that kind of stuff, this is the machine I'd steer people towards. Versus if you're just doing more laser type stuff, the S1 is the way to go. Now, anytime you're using a laser, fumes are gonna be a major thing that you're gonna have to watch out for. And xTool has a brand new fume extractor, and I actually need to do a review on it, but it's called the Safety Pro AP2 air purifier and cyclone. So it actually will help suck out the fumes and then filter it as well. If you are running this completely indoors and you can't vent this outside, you're gonna have to get some type of fume extractor. This one from xTool is definitely on the higher end in terms of price at $700, but they have like a multi-layered filter system. That's gonna be a lot different than some of the other ones that you might find. Now, if you are wanting to go deeper into any of these machines specifically, again, I've got links to the full reviews down below, or just feel free to drop a comment. And if you want a bigger overview of all the other brands of machines that are out there, we're gonna jump into that review right now. Until next time, go make or break something in your shop. See you guys.